right. Hey, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Route Consultant Weekly Webinar. For those of you who I have never met before, who've never been here before, my name is Josh Gregory. I lead our consulting and training teams here. So I work with both new investors and with current contractors as you're getting into the space or if you've been here for a while. But this webinar is a place where we want everyone to be able to come together to learn, ask questions, hopefully have a little bit of fun. And for all of our regular attendees, welcome back. Good to see you again. At least you get to see me. Again, we want to make sure that this is a place where you can continue to come and learn every week. So before I get started, I do have to read the disclaimer that I do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So all that being said, we do want this to be a place where you will hear some helpful information, even if it's not anything materially non-public. So a couple of important events that I want to highlight. Upcoming, we do have our biggest event of the year. This is our Contractor Expo. It is July 28th through the 30th, and we are in Vegas, the Paris Hotel. So if you have never been before, this is a time where we all gather, all the contractors and prospective investors can come as well. It is completely free to attend. We'll cover the food, the drinks, the event. All you have to do is get there. And so importantly, you do need to go ahead and register your hotel. That block is selling out and we're getting close to capacity there. And so if you miss out on that, you'll have to stay at another hotel, walk over to the Paris. Vegas is hot. So ideally, you go ahead and get that room booked. Hopefully, we will see you at the expo. It is a time for, again, having fun and connecting with other contractors, but also learning, talking about the changes that are upcoming in the space. And we'll be talking about a couple of things today later on that you can expect to see at the expo. So hopefully I will get to see you all there. Again, you get to see me every week, but I don't get to see you. So the expo is a great chance for you to meet our team, but also to meet other contractors in your area. Maybe if you're in P&D, talk to line haul contractors or vice versa. So it is a great time. Hopefully we will see you all there. And that is fast approaching. We're about a month away from that now. So again, the link to register should be in the chat right now. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and register, and then we'll save you a spot. Importantly, too, we have a couple of summits coming up. So for new investors, we do new investor summits that are basically 1 or 2 day events designed to teach you as much as we possibly can. And there is a virtual one coming up the first week of July, and then there is an in-person summit in our office in Nashville in a few weeks. So if you're interested in either of those will also be in the chat, or they'll be on our website if you're looking for links to register for those. Now, the way that today will work from a content perspective, I'm going to go over a couple more admin things, and then we're going to jump into some content, go over it, and then we'll get to a pure open Q&A. Questions about anything that I talk about today, that my co-host talks about today, or anything at all that you have that are questions about the FedEx space or logistics as a whole. Now, importantly, though, when we get to the Q&A, there will be a question that you have to answer as well before we answer your question. So the question of the day this week is, what is your favorite room in your house and why? It can be any reason, but type that answer into the chat before you type your question. And I said chat, don't put it in the chat. If you put it in the chat, I'll miss it. Put it in the Q&A button at the bottom of the window. So type in your answer to that question and then type your question. We'll read those live, and then we will get into any questions you guys have. One last little admin thing. We do have a few new listings this week that I'll go over. So we have one in Eastern Tennessee. It's 12 routes at $1.4 million. It's got a manager, 5 spare trucks, a newer fleet as a whole. And it's a contractor who's been running for a long time. So if that's the type of business you're looking for over in Tennessee, that one is new this week. We've got one in Virginia that is 17 routes at $965,000. Manager, 16 trucks, and again, a long tenured contractor, and there's some seller financing and assumable truck debt options there as well. Next one is out of South Carolina. It is 10 P&D routes at $550,000. This one's operating at about a 14% margin, has a manager, 14 trucks with 4 spares, and it is a very popular and growing territory as well. Next one is in Missouri. It is 9 P&D routes at $560,000. This one has a driving manager with a lot of experience and 2 spare trucks as well. And then the last one we have here is out of Indiana. It is 18 P&D routes at 1.4 million. This one has 3 managers that all have a proven track record of running contingency. So that's the type of operation and that kind of expansion you're looking for. And it has 25 trucks with 7 spares available as well. So this is one that can be run remotely, has a bunch of management in place, and is currently only 6 days a week as well. So those are the 5 new listings this week. If you have questions about any of them, you can reach out to our team. We will send you all the details and help answer any questions you have on those. Okay, so in a little bit, I will bring my co-host on, but what I wanted to start out today is just giving a quick update on some very recent FedEx news that just came out. So just a quick background for those of you who don't know, FedEx currently operates not just in the US, they operate in Canada as well. And it is a similar contractor model to what we have in the US. There's definitely some differences, but it is a contractor model. Now, as we've talked about multiple times this year, one of the biggest market shaping trends for FedEx is that they are working to consolidate all of their different networks into one. So right now, FedEx Express deliveries are a separate network from the FedEx Ground network. So it's 2 different sets of trucks and packages that are delivered. It's all FedEx, but it's done by 2 different networks because Express is done by FedEx employees and Ground is delivered by the contractor network. So everyone on this webinar is most likely a FedEx Ground contractor already or a prospective investor looking to get into the FedEx Ground network and become a contractor. Now, yesterday, the big announcement is that we saw FedEx announce that the Ground network in Canada was going to be absorbed by the Express network in Canada. Now, that was big news because we all expected the opposite. So what we thought was going to happen is that Ground was going to take over all of the Express volume, but instead the Express is taking over the Ground contractor network in Canada. So lots of buzz around this news. So importantly, I just wanted to make sure everybody had heard about that, but also just to say this is really a decision that is exclusively focused on the uniqueness of the Canadian territory. I would not say that this is going to be a reflection at all on US markets. And there should not be significant worries there for those of us in the US. In Canada, Express is significantly bigger than Ground. And this actually mirrors a similar move that we saw FedEx make already earlier this year at the end of last year around Alaska and Hawaii. Those 2 states were also converted to Express only. And they are also very unique states that are different from the contractor model in most of the US. Alaska looks a lot like Canada in model. And Hawaii actually involves, there's some planes that have to hop around between islands. So a very different model entirely. And so that's why both of those ended up in the Express network. But the remaining 48 states in the US, we will continue to see Express roll into the Ground network. So for the 99% of contractors in the US, you're continuing to see the expectation that Express, all of that volume, all of that network is going to come into the Ground network over the next year and a half for most of us. So again, I just wanted to address it, the update on Express, the real way to think about it. Canadian market looks very different and should not be seen as any kind of reflection on what to expect for the future of the US market. So I wouldn't let that worry you. But there is tons to talk about around the Express integration. We've talked about a little bit, but there's a lot more to talk about around how to plan for it, how it's going to affect you, how to be successful there. And we are going to be covering all of that in depth at the Expo next month. We're going to have multiple sessions talking about it. We're going to be also covering some of the other market updates to be aware of, in particular that potential for the UPS strike, which is that potential is growing daily. So if either of those, if you're already a contractor, you got to be there, you got to see and hear all of these answers that you can plan accordingly. But even if you were looking to get into the space, you should definitely attend to find out what to expect from your market in these next few months and years. So make sure to register for the expo. And again, this is open to both contractors and investors. So I hope to see all of you there next month. Now, on those same lines, to talk a little bit more about the expo and what to expect there, we have actually brought Melody today on, and she is our director of HR here at Patent Logistics. And she's going to be covering some really important topics at the expo this year. So Melody, why don't you go ahead and jump on and give a little bit of an overview of what they can expect from you.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Yeah, so we're excited. This year's expo, I think everybody's going to have a really good time. We've got great vendors and everybody coming. From an HR side, we kind of looked at what were the topics that have come up in consulting questions or have come up just in general day-to-day situations, and what could we really bring to the table this year. So one of the ones that we're going to have, and it's kind of the first one we started with, is the things that will happen in your business, right? These are things that it's not if they happen, it is when they're going to happen. So we're going to touch on everything from lawsuits, because your employees are not only going to threaten them, but then every now and then you will have somebody that will follow through with it. And what are you going to do with that? And how do you kind of prepare ahead of time to mitigate that risk? You're going to have relationships on your team, right? And that's going to be everything from friendships that are no longer friendships. And you're going to have people dating, and you're going to have married couples, and you're going to have all those things. And what do you do when those things turn messy? And kind of what are some policies and things you could put in place ahead of time? How do you prepare for that? I want everybody to be prepared for those unemployment claims that I know get us. You can't fight every unemployment claim, but you can damn sure try. And I want to make sure that everybody is armed with that knowledge and that information. And then those workers' comp claims, like what does that look like when you have light duty restrictions, and what do you have to accommodate for and not, and all those kind of things. So the crux of that one is, it is not if, but when these things happen for you guys. So that's one of the sessions that I'm excited about. We're also going to dive in on that one and a couple of the other sessions on what happens when you have those state laws that compete with FedEx and Department of Labor laws, like the one that we all love these days, which is legalized marijuana, and what do we do in those states. So that's one of the sessions. Another one of the sessions is going to be, around policies and procedures, because I am an HR person at heart. And so we can't have a conversation without let's talk policies and procedures. But we're going to talk about how to do those fairly and consistently, right? Not every employee is the exact same. Situations that should be apples to apples are never apples to apples. And so how do we kind of make sure that you can manage your organization fairly and consistently with those key policies, but also have that human side to know that not every situation is the same thing. So that's going to be one. And the other one that kind of goes really hand in hand with all of these as well is compensation and benefits. And so how do you pay your employees fairly? How do you incentivize them? What are some benefits out there that you could do and that you can offer that are a little bit, niche kind of benefits that you can do? So just different things to look at when you're, thinking about recruiting cost, and you're thinking about how to stay competitive. And when you're trying to figure out, which markets are changing the minimum wage laws. And so what do you have to keep up with, and how to kind of add through all of that. So we'll talk about those. And then last but not least, and this one's one that I'm kind of having fun building out, but it's constructive coaching. But it's not just constructive coaching just for your drivers. I want all of the attendees for this session to really think about all of the teams that impact your business. So if you have somebody doing HR for you, and it doesn't matter if it's your spouse or your sister or a company or a person, you need to be coaching that person or those people on how you want your business run, right? So you need to be giving them that, constructive coaching to say, this is how I want my business run. This is how I want you to handle things for me. This is what my risk level and my gauge is on this. You need your BC to be able to be the same voice that you are, right? they can be the other side of the coin. Like they can be the heavy if you're the softy or vice versa, but they have to know what you expect out of them, all the way down to your drivers. But that constructive coaching side really is making sure that anybody that has a hand in your business and your business reaching its goals, that you are constructively coaching them on what you expect and how you want them to represent your business.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And I think there's this inclination to not think about some of these HR policies until it's a problem. And that is, I have seen so many situations where these types of policies are an afterthought, and you land yourself in hot water as a business owner. Not thinking about these risks to protect the investments you've made is really going to cause problems down the line. So there's lots of this that people will just decide not to invest time into, and it will cost them. It'll cost them employees, it'll cost them money, it'll cost them time. And so this is not, these sessions should not be an afterthought. I'm really looking forward to seeing these need to be things, your day one strategy. And if you've been a contractor for 10 years and haven't implemented any of these things, they need to be your yesterday strategy to get started on. So that's just kind of a highlight of everything you can expect from some of the sessions coming from Melody next year. And so you will continue to hear about these and others as we lead up to the event over the next month. So stay tuned. And again, hopefully we will see you there. So that takes us into the Q&A. Now, everyone can start to type in any of your questions, but as a reminder, the question of the day this week is, what is your favorite room in the house? So make sure you're answering that in the Q&A as you type in your questions. And before we get there, Melody has to first answer that question. So Melody, what is your favorite room in your house?
I'm going to go with the kitchen because, that is the weight of my heart is through food. So I will definitely, we can enjoy, we can make a mess, we can make memories, we can do all the things. But at the end of the day, you leave happy. I'm good with the kitchen.
That is fair. Mine is not the kitchen. Mine is, so if you've seen me on webinars before, if you've seen me answer questions, I love board games. And to just illustrate that, I have a whole room that is only for playing board games. And I have a specific board game table that is only for playing board games, and walls filled with board games in that room. So my board game room is definitely one of my favorite rooms in my house. So that is what I will say is the one I'll point to. And that room's not going anywhere. We get rid of a guest room before we get rid of that.
Well, I can cheat and say we play our card games and dice games on the kitchen table. So
that
tends to be where we,
exactly.
Yes, that tends to be where we land for those card games and things because the snacks are nearby. Like
that's fair. That is fair. Yeah,
I am strategic in that process. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the Q&A. And again, like I said, you can go ahead and type in questions at any time. It can be about what we've talked about today or anything. So first question here, Raj said his favorite room is the family room. Any room where you're spending most of your time with your family is probably a good room. So what are the logical reasons for thinking that FedEx will not migrate Ground to Express? So I'll start by pointing back to the reason that what has gone to Express, kind of some of the reasons why it did. Both Alaska and Hawaii are very unique territories that were hard to service for contractors anyway. So that was always one that FedEx has kind of looked to target. So those aren't surprises at all. In Canada, Express was significantly bigger than Ground. And the Ground contractors there, it was a different looking model. It was really rural. It just looked very different than the US, and Express being so large there is the reason that kind of rolled up into that. Now, in the US, on the other hand, Ground is larger. There are significantly more Ground in the US. There have already been multiple waves of testing and rolling out Express into the ground network. It's happened across the country and it's continuing to happen. So it's not just us guessing that they are continuing to show and do that. On the other hand, Express vehicles are all pretty small. So it's drivers are used to different things on the Express side than the ground side. And it would be a monumental multi-billion-dollar move to try to bring ground into the Express network for FedEx. The number of employees they would have to hire, the number of new vehicles they would have to buy would be just about impossible to try to bring all of ground into Express. So there's a large number of reasons. One being that it'd be almost impossible to accomplish, and two being that they've already started to roll Express into ground. So we're already seeing it, and they've made commitments to it, and it's only going to continue to move. So like I said, we will talk in detail more about that at the Expo next month, but there's very little reason to worry about any kind of large scale rolling of ground into Express in the lower 48. So for Jared, so his answer is the garage. All of my favorite toys are there. I hear you on that. I wish I had a garage. All of my favorite toys are spread in all of the places we pretend are garage, closets and spaces across our house. So that is on the to-do list for the next house we own. So his question is for the Canadian market. Do you know anything about how the contractors were compensated for the routes they're losing? There haven't been any real details on that yet. This just happened yesterday. We do know there will be some kind of buyout on FedEx's side, and that they'll offer contracts and employment to the ground drivers. But there hasn't been any real detail. We're in, the 24-hour news cycle right now, so we're reporting as it happens, but there will be some kind of buyout for those contractors. All right. And then similar question from Tim, do they lose their investment? They are buying them out. So it is something where, those contractors will get some kind of closing settlement. We don't know the exact numbers there. Another one from Jeff, didn't answer the room question, but I'll forgive him. So line haul, do we see any risk for FedEx to bring that in-house? No, that's even harder. FedEx doesn't have anywhere near the number of line haul tractors that they do, FedEx Express. Like there's very few in-house line haul on the FedEx side. So that would be extremely expensive to try to bring all of that into the FedEx ecosystem. That's going to stay with the contractor. There's already gaps in terms of how much of the volume FedEx still has to go to third parties to fill a lot of runs. So that's almost more unlikely than P&D. And then do we see this, basically just a question from Mark. First, his favorite room is the kitchen, loves food. So similar to Melody. But do we see this affecting valuations? Do we see this, causing uncertainty? It shouldn't. It may for like the next week, just because it's fresh news. But over the next week too, we're going to continue to hear more about Express. In these next few months, there are several waves of Express that are coming out. The biggest thing too is right now there is a very strong tailwind due to the uncertainty coming from the UPS strike. So that should counter any uncertainty that could be generated right now on the bank side around this Canadian news. The fact that we are already seeing very positive trends from shippers switching due to the threat of a UPS strike. So this continuing as we get closer, it will only cause more of that. And if the strike does happen, then I've said it before, it'll be the apocalypse, but it will be good for the future of our brand in the space and how much we will kind of recapture as that happens. All right. Next one is from Rick. So favorite room is his garage. All his bikes are stored there. So I think that's a similar, all my favorite toys. I think that's similar to what Jared said earlier, Rick. Have valuations of recent sales in the P&D space increased to reflect the expected benefit from Express? Not yet. I'd say even though we know it's there, and we know that it's coming, it has not begun to really uplift things yet, because for most contractors, at least, there's not enough kind of proven runway to show how much that volume is going to increase. So for all kind of prospective buyers, right now, you're basically looking at a business that this lift is coming. But most of the price and valuations have not reflected it yet. So that's kind of the inflection point we're at. It will come, and it will begin to affect things. But I'd say right now, we have not seen any significant changes yet, but those are imminent. And then let's see. Jeff said, favorite room, wherever the dogs are. I am very much in agreement on that one. But they follow me in whatever room I'm in. So it's really whatever room I'm in is where the dogs are. So I hear you on that. Any thoughts on how contractors will retain express employees? That is going to be a question. So the express typically do have a little bit higher benefit package than a lot of ground drivers for what is often a lighter work day. A lot of those express drivers don't have the really small packages. It's pretty easy in comparison to what some of the ground drivers are doing. So it'll be interesting. I don't see all of those express drivers just immediately jumping in as drivers on the ground side. It'll be kind of a change that happens, but some of them will. So I wouldn't say that there's going to be a huge shift in benefits offered to try to just capture all of those. More so, it'll probably be some mind shift changing that has to happen for those express employees as they kind of realize that this is the new option. There have already been terminals where a large number of express drivers have basically been given pink slips and had to find new jobs as all of that volume and all of those routes roll to the ground network and the contractors. Now, John said, we also have a game room that is always a good place to spend family time. So I hear you on that, John. It's a combination of a couple of mine and the family room question answer from earlier. He said, we deal with complications from having a half urban, half rural delivery area. Will it be further complicated with the integration of Express? The answer to that is maybe. There are multiple factors there. That is one where I would say be at the expo. There's like 4 or 5 answers that I want to give there, but it's more detail than we have time for today. So that's definitely something, the type of answers that we're going to be going through at the expo, because there are multiple factors that will affect what Express looks like for you, and then the type of composition of your territory, decisions you'll probably want to make for how to best handle it. So what I will say is that there's probably different decisions you're going to have to make based on what your territory looks like, and it will look different, but it might not necessarily be a high level of complexity, more of just knowing the different decision matrices you'll have. All right, next one. Tony asked a question that is very difficult for me to answer. Let me see. So his question is, based on previous year's revenue, what is your recommended price point to buy at? So first thing I'll say is we almost never price as a percentage of revenue. It is a metric we will show, and that it's useful for you to kind of know where a lot of businesses fall. So, P&D, lots of times they're usually going to fall somewhere between about 60 and 80% of revenue. And then on line haul, they can be at 90 to 110%. Sometimes they're down in the 80% too, but percentage of revenue is not where we ever price on. We price as a multiple of net operating income. Just knowing the percentage of revenue doesn't show you how efficiently the business is being run, or what the operating income looks like. It doesn't necessarily reflect the fleet or the territory. So I would never tell you to base your price purely on percentage of revenue. It's a good apples to apples way of looking at multiple different businesses, but usually it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 4.5 times net operating income. is how we would typically price them. And in particular, if we're purely talking about, 2022 revenue, we're 6 months out from 2022 now. So the business that you're buying right now may look wildly different than the business that existed in 2022. So I would say it's more important to get a good sense of, over the last few months, what have the revenue run rates looked like, and kind of map that against last year's revenue to get a comparison point. But even then, it still should be in that operating income multiple, not purely a percentage of revenue. So it's really hard to give, just a pure answer to that one, Tony. But I'd say that's at least kind of the thought process that I want you to go through. And then looking at any individual listing, we can go in depth on kind of what we would advise there. All right. So next one here, David said his favorite room is the kitchen. So he agrees with you on that, Melody. Now, his question is, with the fact that volume and projections expecting to remain challenged, have we thought about continue to think about maximizing variable versus fixed and contracts? How do we think about that? Historically, a lot of the times we do recommend trying to get your variable portion of your contract higher. So particularly with the fact that most of the PCATs you're seeing right now that are coming out, so most of the projections when a contract negotiation is happening. So for everybody, whenever it comes to the end of your contract, you get a PCAT, a projection of what they expect your territory to do. So right now, most of those projections do not account for anything that could happen with Express, and they do not account for anything that could happen with the strike. So especially if you're negotiating right now, many of you, I'd tell you, try to keep that variable high. There is a good chance that you're going to outperform what we're seeing right now. Now, it may be that in some of your territories, that's already taken into account because you're already running Express. But for the vast majority of you, I would expect there to be a volume uplift beyond what we're seeing in those PCATs. And even still, FedEx continues to be conservative in their projections. So for the most part, I would still right now err on the side of raising your variable as opposed to fixed. I would say that with the couple of tailwinds we're seeing right now, those are still priorities to maximize. All right. This one's from Raj. You asked a question earlier. Let me see if I can keep this answer short. So what are 3 criteria to weigh and consider before buying line haul? So I don't know if you're saying, so this could be 2 different ways. I'll try to answer both. So it could be you're saying, how do I decide line haul versus P&D? Like, how do I decide if line haul is for me? Or it could be, what are the things that, help you find or help illustrate the value of a line haul business? What are the things you look for to show a higher value line haul? So I'll start by saying, if you're looking at line haul over P&D, so if you're trying to decide if line haul is for you, first off, with line haul, there are fewer day-to-day challenges, fewer kind of daily small headaches, but the problems that do come are typically larger and more expensive. So those assets, those line haul trailers are much more expensive, and drivers are harder to find, and they cost more, and replacing them takes longer. So in line haul, a ton of your time, if not most of your time, should be spent on recruiting. So you either need to be comfortable with that as a skill for yourself, or know that that's spend that you're going to need to make, whether it's on an internal recruiter or some kind of vendor that you want to partner with. So for line haul, know that, most of what you're dealing with is making sure your drivers are happy and that you can continue to, put butts in seats. Recruiting is always an issue for P&D and line haul. It's always something to be worried about. But for line haul, all of your revenue is dictated by your miles. And so losing a run, having a run that doesn't go for a week is a lot of revenue that you miss. So you're really trying to make sure you've always got drivers. And then I will say for line haul, there's a lot less growth pressure. It's not that you can't grow, but in P&D, you don't really have a choice. If your territory grows, you have to keep up with it because you are responsible for delivering all of those packages. Whereas line haul, you have a set number of routes that are a part of your contract. So if you have 3 runs, you could continue to run 3 runs for the next 10 years, and there's no requirement to get any larger. So that is nice as well. So that's a pro. Now, there's lots more I could talk about line haul versus P&D, but just in case your answer was on the other side in terms of choosing the best type of line haul and the value to look at, there's a couple of things to consider. So there's different types of run: dedicated, unassigned, spare runs, spot runs. In general, though, the most consistent revenue comes from dedicated runs that means they will always run every day. They'll always go between point A and point B. You will get consistent revenue every day, or every couple of days, depending on if it's a team run. And so that is the revenue that you can count on, essentially 100% of the time. So very consistent. You know what it's going to do. You will know your expenses as well. Unassigns are a little bit more variable. You do have more flexibility there as well. But those are the type of runs where you won't necessarily go out every day, and you won't always go to the same place if you do go out every day. So your expenses and your revenue vary a little bit. So ideally, you get the majority, or at least a good core of your runs, to be dedicated, so that you've got that consistent revenue, and then know that you've got, unassigns will help with your flexibility and continued growth path in line haul. The other thing is you want your runs to be higher mileage. In a lot of ways, line haul can just be tracked, as an expense per mile. You can look at it that way. More miles is almost always better. So for solo runs with one driver in the vehicle, you typically want it to be at least 2,000 miles or higher. And for teams, at least 4,000 or higher, when we're looking at kind of the mid-level profitability and up. So the more mileage you can see on those runs, the better you'll be. And then on the fleet side as well, newer tractors are going to have lower expenses. It's just the way it is. So if you see a business with mainly dedicated runs that are all high mileage and a new fleet, that's going to be just about, the best business you can find in line haul. If it's got all of those, you're probably not going to find one with all of those on the market, but, looking at certain factors like that will help you decide which ones to spend your time and energy on. All right. That basically puts us at the end of questions here. So while I'm closing out, if anybody slips in a question, I will answer it. But just as a recap for today, much of the things that are affecting the industry right now, Express, how it's going to play out in the US, what the UPS strike could mean, all of that are things that we will be talking about in depth in Vegas. And there will be unlimited food and drinks. So hopefully we will see you there. All right. And it looks like, 2 quick ones got in. Okay. So now, okay. So this one's from John. So it's a question about metals. Now, for everybody who doesn't know or hasn't heard, there's metal systems in place for P&D where they basically are judging you on a few different factors. Service, safety, efficiency, complaints, and those put you in 3 different categories: bronze, silver, or gold. So his question is, he's seeing a significant gap on efficiency, and the terminal is telling him that it is not a huge factor, but should he be worried about how it affects things? So what I will tell you is, efficiency is a part of the metal ranking. They're right that it's not a huge part, but it's about 6% when they're looking at their overall metals ranking. So, a huge gap there can bring you down. And so the real thing is, if your safety and service and complaints are all really high, you'll still be in a good territory. I don't know what you're at right now, bronze or silver, what your trending is. But efficiency is not going to be, the end all be all when it comes to the percentage for your metals. But if you're struggling already in a couple of other places, that can be the deciding factor that'll take you to a new category. So it is always worth reviewing and seeing, they're almost always using Work Area Planner to identify those efficiency gaps. So is it correct? Are they missing anything? Sometimes there is a miss there. And if you can explain it, you can help justify and get around those standards. But it could also be that those efficiency gaps are things that you may need to address in your business. Realistically, forget about the metals, but those efficiency gaps could be things that addressing brings down your payroll, brings down your fuel, your repair and maintenance. And it may be that, outside of all the metals, those are things worth spending time on, or it could be that the work area planner's off and it's just something to explain and understand. But it's not something to ignore. That I will say, regardless, that is the nice thing about the metals program, knowing where you stand and knowing the areas that you have gaps in, that helps you as a business owner say, okay, one, I want to get in good standing with FedEx. It's great. But two, where do I need to spend time and energy to make FedEx happy, but also to improve my margins? So I would spend time on that, whether it's to help your metal or to improve your margins. Both are valid reasons to spend time on it. So hopefully that answered that for you. Now, last one here is from Tony. So his question is, can you talk a little bit about buying versus being awarded line haul runs? Yes. So there are two real paths into the line haul space, into the P&D space as well. You can either buy them or get runs for free. When you get runs for free, when they're awarded to you, they do not come with trucks. They do not come with drivers. And you typically do not know much of anything about the history or the mileage of the territory you're buying or the runs you're getting. So let's say it's 2 dedicated runs that you're picking up. You can never have just one run. It has to be at least 2 runs at the terminal. So 2 will be the minimum. But let's say you're evaluating a listing where you're buying 2 runs or you're being awarded 2 runs. If it's awarded, then like I said, you're going to have to buy your own fleet. You will have to find drivers. And like I said at the beginning, those are the 2 hardest things about line haul. So those are very important concerns to take into account before you pick on a business. The other thing too, is if they are dedicated runs that are posted at a terminal, typically those are runs that have been offered to other contractors at the terminal, and either they didn't have the resources to take them, or none of the contractors at the terminal wanted those runs. So while they are available and free, they could be low quality, low mileage runs with no trucks or drivers in place. And so typically what I tell people when it comes to being awarded runs or territories on the P&D side, you can be successful getting awarded territories, but I would strongly encourage you not to start with one of those. Get a business that is running well already, that already has drivers and trucks in place. And then you can expand into those awarded territories once you know what it takes to hire, to bring trucks in, to operate effectively, what a good run looks like in the FedEx space. I've seen too many situations where people come in and because it's free, there's no startup cost in theory to buy it. They think that it's going to be free, but often those can end up being more costly from both a money and time perspective than if you had just come in with the right business. And if you come in on your first one, struggle and fail when even though it was free and you had to start it all up yourself, FedEx still doesn't have a lot of forgiveness for you. So that is often a very hard path to begin. So I would just urge you to have some caution there if it really is your first entry point into the FedEx space. Okay, I think that is it on the question side. So Melody, again, thank you so much for joining us this week. Cannot wait to see some of your sessions and cannot wait to see everyone at the expo in a month. And hopefully we will see you all there.
And I will come on anytime I get this easy of a pass. So gladly. And yes, we will see everybody in Vegas and have a good time.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everybody.